Hello and welcome to Views on News. The entire Pakistani nation is celebrating 76 years of independence with fervor, enthusiasm and a patriotic zeal and zest. The atmosphere across the nook and the corner of the country had been phenomenal throughout the day. The day dawned with a 31-gun salute in the federal capital Islamabad and 21-gun salute in the provincial capitals. Now, 14th of August 1947 marks a momentous point in the global history when the Muslims of subcontinent got a separate homeland, getting a practical manifestation of the dream of Dr. Allama Muhammad Iqbal was not an easy task. Yet the Muslims, by the dint of unity and perseverance under the dynamic leadership of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, achieved this milestone. On this auspicious occasion today, President Dr. Arif Alvi has called for following Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah's message of unity, faith and discipline. Also, a message by former Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who has underlined the need to summon the spirit that marked the Pakistan movement. Also, we saw Chief of Army Staff General Syed Asim Munir, while addressing the Azadi parade at Pakistan Military Academy, quoted Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, let me quote, "There is no power on earth which can undo Pakistan, inshallah," unquote. Also, Azad Jammu and Kashmir Prime Minister has said the unconditional love for Pakistan is deep rooted in the hearts and the minds of the Kashmiri people. We have seen the people in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir also celebrating with enthusiasm the Pakistan Independence Day. Also, they raised and waved Pakistani flags at different locations in IIOJK, chanting pro-Pakistani and anti-India slogans. They will also be observing tomorrow the Indian Independence Day as a Black Day. In today's program, we'll be talking about the spirit behind the Pakistan movement, the kind of sacrifices the Muslims of the subcontinent had to make to get a separate homeland. What had been the challenges at the inception and how Pakistan fared through those challenges during these 76 years, and also what had been the major achievements during the last 76 years of independence, and what are the future challenges and how to cope with those challenges. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Tughral Yamin. He's senior analyst. Dr. Yamin, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Later on in the show, we'll be joined by other participants as well. I'll be introducing them later on. Dr. Yamin, let's talk about the Pakistan movement, the spirit behind it. What were the key events that unfolded during the course of that Pakistan movement?
Tehami Sahab, one thing was clear to the Muslims of the subcontinent, that there was no choice for them but to have a separate homeland, because they were feeling persecuted by the Hindu majority, and also they knew that the English would be leaving any time. They were economically weakened during the Second World War, and the colonial era was coming to an end. So it was a time in the history of the people of the subcontinent to go for independence and for Muslims to ask for a separate homeland. Although Muhammad Ali Jinnah Sahab initially was not for a separate homeland for the Muslims, but then he realized that the Hindu leaders were not going to give them their due rights. They were a very, very sizable minority, very, very big minority. So that's why Muhammad Ali Jinnah insisted that we are a separate nation, we have separate customs, and we need a separate homeland. Although in his 11th of August address in 1947, he said that religion has no business in the affairs of the state. He realized that now that he has achieved independence, he would like all citizens to be equal, irrespective of what caste, creed, and creed that they followed. So he realized that he has to work hard. He had very few years of his life left. His lung X-ray was one of the most closely guarded secrets. He knew that he would not survive, and he was the only hope for the Muslims. He was a person who knew the law. He was a brilliant constitutional lawyer. He could speak for the Muslims in a manner that was very effective. Although he could not speak local languages, he was more Englishman than the English themselves, but he knew that he was their lone spokesman. So he was able to achieve in a very short span of time, maybe 7 years, a new homeland for the Muslims, and it was his efforts, and he was able to mobilize the Muslims, many of whom could not understand what Jinnah Sahib used to speak, for the righteous cause that we needed a separate homeland. And we got it on the 14th of August 1947, and then rest we know is history.
So at that very point in history, at the inception of Pakistan, when the Muslim subcontinent got that dream coming true under the dynamic leadership of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, what were the main challenges at that time confronted by the Muslims?
The new nation of Pakistan had many challenges. First of all, the Indian government refused to give Pakistan their share of assets. They froze the monies that were meant for us, and it was much later on the insistence of Mr. Gandhi, who said, I will fast unto death until you release Pakistan's money, that some of it was released, not all. We didn't get our share of arms and ammunition. Many of the train bogies that were sent to us were filled with stones and bricks, and a war broke out in Kashmir. Not a single unit of Pakistan Army at that time was complete, because the British had created units on the basis of religion. Each unit had Hindus, Muslims, Dogras, Sikhs. So there was not a single Muslim unit. Fighting had broken out. The army had to be recreated from scratch. You had to build your training institutions. We did not have a military academy. We did not have any other institution apart from Command Staff College in Quetta that we inherited from the British. And we didn't have tanks, we didn't have aircraft, and fighting had begun in Kashmir, where many of the officers joined voluntarily, because the acting command-in-chief at that time, General Gracie, refused the Qaid. He said, I will not send British officers to fight the British officers on the other side. So that was a problem, a genuine problem that he had to face. We had no government machinery, and there was a heavy influx of refugees from what is now India, Indian Punjab, and other parts of India from where the refugees had started. That was the biggest transmigration in the history of the world at that time. 15 million people swapped over. So it was a time of great hardship. There was no government machinery. There was a lot of bloodshed. My mother tells me that as a teenager, she was sitting on a box on a train as they crossed the blood-soaked plains of Punjab. So it was a time of difficulty, but also a time of hope, because all of us were willing, or my ancestors, or our ancestors were willing to work hard for this country. And they did lay a good foundation for this country.
Right. We are honored to have been joined on the phone line by another participant, Professor Dr. Riaz Ahmed, Tamghe Imtiaz, historian, biographer of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, former director at NIHCR and Quaid-e-Azam chair at Quaid-e-Azam University. Dr. Riaz Ahmed, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Talking about the dynamic leadership of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, his wisdom, the vision he carried with that persona that he carried along to make this particular dream of Dr. Allama Muhammad Iqbal come true. Could you shed a little bit of light? What were those features of that personality that actually provided that impetus to the Pakistan movement. And at the end of the day, Muslims of subcontinent got that dream coming true in the form of Pakistan on 14th of August 1947.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the PTV that you have invited me to speak on this very important occasion, Independence Day, and with reference to the founder of Pakistan, Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah played a very significant role in the creation of Pakistan and the struggle for Pakistan, according to my latest work, the Pakistan Movement New Dimensions, is spread over long periods. I have proved in my book that Qaid-e-Azam started his political secret steps for the Pakistan movement since 1935 and remained secret up to 1939. Then 40, he came forward clearly on 23rd March 1940 at Lahore, the All-Muslim session, a formal resolution demanding the creation of Pakistan on the basis of 6 provinces of Punjab, Sindh, Balochistan, and UP. Now it is called KP, and on the eastern side, Bengal and Assam. And within a short time, we see that he was able to create, but this short 7 years, he had to face a number of hurdles. And just as in 1942, he had to face the Cripps mission, and he successfully tackled. Then he had to face 44 Gandhi Jinnah talks. Then in 1945, June, July, Shimla conference. And at that time, in the Shimla conference, the Indian leaders, Congress leaders, Gandhi, Nehru, and others were also invited on the table talk. And Qaid-e-Azam tried to convince them how to create Pakistan. But this conference ended without any result. Then the conclusion came that we should go to elections. In 45-46 elections, the Muslim League candidates won more than 90% seats in the assembly. On that basis, the British should have created Pakistan, but they were not ready. They sent the cabinet mission plan, and they go for the interim government. But that was the chance to make Jinnah and his colleagues to deviate from the cause of Pakistan. But Jinnah and his colleagues were determined to create Pakistan. In November 1946, in a private interview with Lord Wavell, he pressed him to create Pakistan. And this had been mentioned in the Lord Wavell book, his biography. And then we see how the Congress failed. They blamed Wavell as he has failed. And they brought new viceroy. In March 1947, Lord Mountbatten, and it was thought that he will tackle Jinnah. But he also failed to tackle Jinnah. And in April 1947, he admitted in his private papers that I became helpless before Jinnah, and I will have to go to partition. And then the Congress went for partitioning 3 provinces, Punjab, Bengal, and Assam. Even then, a 3rd June plan comes, and partition plan was that was finalized. On that basis, Indian Independence Act was passed in July by 47 by the British Parliament, and then on that basis we see Pakistan was created. But Mountbatten and the Congress leaders were just trying to, even in the last hours, to avoid partition. And they were taking a number of steps. Jinnah, in order to tackle the issue and go forward, he decided that and forced Mountbatten to invite the first session of Pakistan Constituent Assembly in Lahore, in Karachi. And that's why on 10th August, first session of the Pakistan Constituent Assembly was called, in which on the 11th August, Qaidam was elected as the first president of this assembly. And on 12th August, Pakistan, Liaquat Ali Khan got Pakistan flag approved by the parliament. And Mountbatten came to Karachi on 13th, and on the 14th morning at 9 a.m., in the meeting of the Pakistan Constituent Assembly, Qaid-e-Azam and Mountbatten transferred power to Constituent Assembly in Pakistan. That's how Pakistan came into being. And that's how we see how Jinnah took pains to convince them to Congress and to create. Then, even after the creation of Pakistan, they created Hindus and Congress created hurdles. They created bloodshed, asked the Sikh leaders to kill the Muslims in millions, especially in East Punjab. And we see that I also belong to East Punjab. At that time, I was 5 years old. We had to migrate from there. So that is how we have faced in our childhood how Pakistan was created. Despite these challenges, we see Qaid-e-Azam and his colleagues heroically faced the problems and made Pakistan is a great country. And Sanaya Khan was the first person to congratulate Qaid-e-Azam on 15th August in a telegram from Paris that Mr. Jinnah, you have created the largest Islamic state in the whole world. That's how we see Jinnah very painfully, with great work, with hardship, he created Pakistan. And when he created Pakistan, on 14th August, he said, the freedom, freedom for the Muslim is not a new thing. This is a reminder of the old, centuries-old Muslim rule over the Indian subcontinent. And for Hindus, it is a new thing. For us, it is not a new thing. And Pakistan has come into being. It will leak for a long period to come for the living and coming generations.
Right. Thank you very much for being with us on Views on News tonight. Professor Dr. Riaz Ahmed Tamga, Imtiaz historian and biographer of Qaid-e-Azam, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, former director at Qaid-e-Azam chair at Qaid-e-Azam University. Thank you very much for being with us. We are honored to have been joined by another participant in the studio, Dr. Hassan Daud, senior economist and former chief executive officer of KP Board of Investment. Thank you very much for your time also, for being with us tonight on Views on News. Talking about the economic hardships at the inception, right from the day one, what were those hardships? As earlier we were discussing, Dr. Yamin was shedding light that the due assets of Pakistan were frozen, they were not given, and after Mr. Gandhi intervened himself, threatening that he would go on a hunger strike until that is not given to Pakistan. So what were those challenges Pakistan had to confront at the inception in terms of economy?
I think for a new state, there were several challenges. Besides that, we had the natural endowment that we still have, and the challenges of mass migration, people coming in mass numbers, their settlement, getting to have them in a way that their lives are in a condition where they can take the country forward. And also there was hardly any industrial setup available where jobs and employment could be ensured. So I think for Jinnah Saab and his team, there were number of challenges, but amongst those challenges, I think the commitment that the entire leadership had, and even now today, we talk about economic challenges that the country has. I think if the leadership is pragmatic and the leadership has a vision, I think all those challenges can be addressed. And therefore, in the initial inception days, Pakistan's challenges were addressed by the resilience of the nation and of the leadership of the Qai dynasty.
Right. So over the years, we have seen that there have been economic challenges at different times in Pakistan, but there have been some economic achievements also. So could you share a little bit of light during what time there have been achievements, particularly for Pakistan on the economic front?
I think they've been crests and troughs all along our journey. We've had greatest of time and industrial so to say revolution coming into Pakistan in the 50s and 60s, and perhaps thereafter we went through a trough where nationalism was also introduced. A lot of industries and banks were nationalized. But thereafter, I think, as a matter of fact, I think our natural endowment, we have great resources, and those resources were, and of course human resources as a principle, we were able to address those challenges. There were moments of glory, despite the fact that during the time that we had our nuclear explosion, there were a lot of restriction, and even thereafter we have also had challenges of mass migration coming from Afghanistan, and we have hosted a large number of Afghanis in our country. Despite all these challenges, I think Pakistan has done well. We may have done a bit better, but I think overall we are moving in the right direction. Slowly though, but we are moving in the right direction.
Right. Dr. Yamin, when we talk about Qaid's message of unity, faith and discipline, so specifically talking about unity at the moment when Pakistan is confronted with challenges on a number of fronts, how crucial is to become united, as President has called for following that message of Qaid of being united at this particular point in history?
Unity is very important, but in my personal opinion, in the past few years, the country has been polarized by a very toxic narrative which was created, particularly on the social media. And what I felt was that there was a deliberate effort to tell the people that there's no hope, that the country is doomed, that we are no good. I think this is a very wrong thing. Our country is very good, as my fellow panelist has very rightly said, that we are endowed with so many blessings of Allah Almighty, and we have got a good human resource. There are young people like you, educated, smart. They can bring about great changes. They do well when they are entrusted with independent assignments. I have taught for more than 11 years in universities, and I think that our students are second to none. They are extremely good. So human resource, varied climate, all kinds of landscapes. We have 7 of the 8,000 peaks in our country. We have the Indus water system, which irrigates most of our country, which is agrarian, and we have got deserts. We have people with different characteristics, and we are doing well. I fail to understand why do we keep on telling us, and I tell this to young people also. Look, why do you talk about this? Why are you pessimistic? There's no need to be pessimistic.
Dr. Yamin, thank you very much for your kind and lovely words for me, as well as for the youth of Pakistan. I really appreciate that. It would definitely be heartening for the youth to learn such type of kind words coming for them. But where do you think, is there any sort of, when we talk about the phenomenon of generation gap, is there any sort of a difference in understanding between different generations over here in Pakistan? Perhaps there is a need of bridging that gap, or by the dint of communication between the generations, so that this particular message, the one you just have delivered, reaches to the youth and it gives them hope. And then when we talk about the second word in that message of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, to have that very faith.
Faith, yeah.
And that happens to be the antidote of hopelessness.
Absolutely.
Am I correct on
Absolutely.
that? So how to bridge that gap, if there is any sort of gap?
The onus lies on my generation. I was born 10 years after Pakistan came into being. My mother was a teenager when she crossed over. My father was a young man. He was here studying in Common College, Lahore. My parents never told me that this country was created for nothing. They were always very hopeful. Although we saw 71, our country broke into two. I think that was again one period in our national life when hopelessness stayed in our eyes, but we did well. Our foreign exchange was being earned from the jute that we sold from East Pakistan, but we survived that and we did well. So our parents never told us that Pakistan was created for nothing. So it's important for my generation and a generation next to me to tell the generation younger than all of us that look, our country is very good. And it is you are our future leaders, you are going to be our future prime ministers, chief ministers, chiefs of army staff, and you are the people who are going to take our country ahead. So there is no need to lose hope. It's a very good country. Hamza Khan has won the squash tournament after 37 years. We are doing well in cricket. We'll do well in hockey also. We lost hockey this time, but it doesn't matter. So the teachers in school, the professors, the chief executive officers, wherever they are, they must tell the younger people that they must not lose heart. They must not believe in the nonsense that is being spewed out by on social media. We are a very good country.
Dr. Hassan, when we talk about the youth, how important and how that bridge can be made between the previous generation and the newer generation, specifically to make the newer generation economically viable and to contribute to the country's economy by becoming hopeful rather than being hopeless, and following that very spirit and the wisdom behind that very message of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah of having faith?
Yeah, I think we need to understand one fundamental fact, and for both the generations, for different perspective. The first is that it's very important for us to realize this, that the world is becoming flat and it's becoming fast. And why I say flat? Because you can move around the world because of globalization. You can just move around the world, learn about different cultures, perhaps compare them with your culture, and also work in a cross-cultural environment. For instance, CPAC, where Chinese are coming into Pakistan, working with us. I've led CPAC for 4 years, so therefore, I mean, even in few projects like while we were working close to KKH, from Havelia to Thakot, the project director was a Malaysian, So and even in few instances we had Turks. So this world is becoming not just interconnected but also interdependent. And the other thing is that it's becoming fast. Just imagine that by 2030, when CPAC would end, China would have 6G. So what that means is that the speed of decision making would be 1,000 times faster to what it is now. So both the generations, for different reasons, have to realize this. For perhaps my generation and the one which is elder to me, have to realize that the world is changing, and it's changing much faster and perhaps more with the speed for us to assimilate that change and realize that what is our key role as seniors in this. For generation which you represent and younger to you, is for them to realize the kind of competition that is coming their way, and for the government also to realize that they have to create that enabling environment where there are jobs opportunities for youngsters, and there's an environment of respect for elders. And if you create that environment and the sort of structures in which seniors can interact with youngsters and youngsters can learn from their experiences, it's extremely vital. And therefore, the role of Pakistan television is so critical. If you look at other countries, there are channels which are dedicated to history, and at least in the time in the whole 24 hours, they dedicate time for history, they dedicate time for industrialization, they dedicate and business of course, and there's dedicated time for politics. I think as a nation we are overwhelmed with politics. We discuss politics more than what we can digest, even youngsters.
But I show you at PTV World and other sister channels of PTV, a lot of talk is done regarding these matters, including education, even history, and other pressing concerns Pakistan is faced with. I'll come back to you to discuss a couple of more things. For now, we are joined by Mr. Aizaz Chaudhry, former ambassador, on the phone line. Mr. Aizaz, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. So let's begin with the time of inception of Pakistan. A separate Muslim, homeland, Muslims of the subcontinent got at that very time. A separate nation of Muslims came into existence. When we talk about the foreign relations at that very particular time, what were the main challenges for this new nation in establishing those friendly relations in the Committee of Nations?
Well, the circumstances in which Pakistan was born were hostile from our east, and no infrastructure, no state infrastructure was in place to counter and address that hostility. And therefore, the foreign policy of Pakistan, which had to be, sketched or erected right from the scratch, like everything else in the state of Pakistan at that time, we started our life with a huge challenge. As you know, the Kashmir dispute had erupted. There were refugees which had come from India, and there were water issues, and then there were hostile statements from Indian leaders that Pakistan may not survive, and then there were also the share of Pakistan in the treasury, military stores, and others being denied to us. So it was a mighty big challenge for the leadership at that time. How do we survive as a state and also orient our foreign policy in a manner that all these issues are addressed? And you can see at that time the leadership thought that the United States, which had emerged as the most preeminent power after the Second World War, was an obvious choice for our country to lean towards for economic assistance, for agriculture, and also for military purposes. And that was the start of our foreign policy. But then, as the things went by, because the Quaid-e-Azam had also provided a very clear guidance that our foreign policy should be that of friendliness and goodwill, and that we should be honest in our dealings and fair play. So those things also played a part. And then we also had the overarching sort of inbuilt guidance that we had to have good relations with the Muslim world. After all, Pakistan was created for the Muslims of India. And therefore, all these things started shaping our foreign policy with a leaning towards the Muslim world, leaning towards the West, and then so on. Then it went on, as you know, the 1965 war came, and people thought that the expectations that we had with the U.S. were not met, and so was the case in 1971. But then the Bhutto era was looking more towards China, towards third world, and left of the center as a whole, the so-called Islamic socialism. And then we had Ziaul Haq coming in again. Afghan jihad was conceived to counter the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Once again, Pakistan and the United States came together as allies, but once the Soviets left, so did the Americans, and we saw once again Pakistan and the United States falling out with each other. Not only that, but the United States also imposed sanctions under Pressler Amendment in 1990. And right about that time, the movement, the indigenous movement in occupied Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir, flared up in a way, and we saw that OIC Islamic countries became very active in extending support to Pakistan and to the Kashmiris for their right to self-determination. While all this was going on, and in our West, we saw in Afghanistan Taliban taking roots after the Mujahideen's infighting, and then came 9/11, right in the middle of all that. And after 9/11, the global priorities changed, and Pakistan had also to adjust. And you saw Pakistan became an ally in the global war on terror. Every time we had entered into an alliance with the United States, there were implications, but because of Afghan jihad and because of the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan and our becoming a partner of the U.S., there were far-reaching implications to which are relevant even today. Now, a new dynamic has started, and this dynamic is the U.S. competition with China. China is now the emerging power, and the United States has chosen India as the country which will counterbalance the rising China. So once again, this area is in global focus, and Pakistan is right in the middle of it. So I would say that our foreign policy has always been geared to meeting all these challenges that I enumerated. And most of these challenges, as you can see, emanated from the global geopolitics, and where we focused more on area. So the gentleman who was speaking before I came in, I think I tend to agree with him that a lot needs to be done and focused on for the development of the country. And foreign policy also should serve that broader purpose. We are too obsessed at times with the politics that we tend to neglect much else that must also happen. So foreign policy should also be actually serving the needs of the country at this time. And let me say the most sort of priority needs I would need at this time is to achieve economic security of the country along with human security. Now, unless we have economic security, our defense, our other challenges will not be met. And that's my sort of resume of the foreign policy challenges since independence. Right,
Mr. Aizaz Ahmed Chaudhry, former ambassador, joining us on the phone line. Thank you very much for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Yamin, when we talk about the foreign policy front, the statement we have got when we talk about specifically India, the Chief of Army Staff has said that India has never been able to reconcile the idea of Pakistan and is a threat to regional peace and stability. We've talked at length in a number of programs about the behavior and the attitude of the current authorities in India in particular. But hasn't it been a phenomenal feat on the part of Pakistani foreign policy apparatus when we talk about India's nefarious design of isolating Pakistan in the Committee of Nations, yet Pakistan enjoys cordial, brotherly and friendly relations with a large number of countries. What's your understanding?
Pakistan is not isolated. I think India has a campaign to isolate Pakistan, demonize Pakistan, ostracize Pakistan. But Pakistan is not isolated. We saw that some of the countries which are friendly to Pakistan, namely China, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, they refused to go to Srinagar when the Indians held a tourism summit for the G20 countries over there. And otherwise also the OIC Secretary General has been to Pakistan in this winter, and he's been to Azad Kashmir. Even Antonio Guterres, who was here a couple of years ago, he said that I am closely following the situation in Kashmir and I am advising restraint. So it is not that Pakistan does not have friends. Pakistan has cordial relations with most countries of the world, and the army chief has to say things that he has to say, but our statesmen, our politicians have always been saying that we would like to have cordial relations with India also. They've never said that we want to go to war with India.
That is what we have seen. Pakistani authorities always having the desire of talking with India,
absolutely,
always extending a hand of friendship towards it. But it was India that was shying away from dialogue, especially when we talk about resolving the outstanding disputes. That's why the Chief of Army Staff says that the nefarious designs in the minds of the Indian authorities, especially when we talk about the Hindutva-driven ideology
He has to
that
say
has
that,
been
yeah.
spearheaded by BJP itself,
Absolutely.
Narendra Modi. That's why he is forced to say that India has never been able to reconcile with the idea of Pakistan and is, of course, a threat to regional peace and stability.
Yeah, because we believe that India is our arch enemy. India is never reconciled with our existence. So the army chief has to say that, but the prime ministers have never been brandishing their swords. It is the Indians, on the other hand.
Yeah.
Modi and even if the India alliance comes to power with Rahul Gandhi at the head of it, or anybody else, they do not want to talk to you because they do not want to consider you equal to them. You see, one of the greatest coups for them was when they were able to convince the Americans that Indo-Pakistan is not a formulation. It should be instead AFPAC, lump Pakistan with Afghanistan. They're not our equals. But even the Americans understand that Pakistan cannot be ignored. Pakistan has a presence. It's a nuclear armed country. It's one of the biggest Muslim countries in the world. It has its own place in the world. So Pakistan cannot be ignored. And I think our foreign policy is by and large has been very balanced. We have tried to make friends with everybody. As Quaid-e-Azam said, we want friendship with all countries. That's what he said.
Right. Dr. Hassan, President today during the official flag hoisting ceremony has given a very startling figure of the school children which are out of school. They happen to be 27 million children. How do you relate the quality education with a flourishing economy?
Yeah, you know, for a university professor that I am, and for a gentleman who works on projects and investment, my biggest fear and nightmare is that each year we have about 1.3 million people entering the job market. And when they enter job market, and this number is going to become around 1.5 to around 3 million by 2050. So unless we create opportunities for them, this will remain a challenge for any government. And with the speed that our population is growing, 244 million, I keep saying that we should stop talking about million. We should say 250 million now, because this is frightening, really.
So what are your recommendations when you talk about that population explosion, the kind of pace at which the population is growing? What sort of policy and its implementation do we require, keeping in view our resources?
Well, you know, first of all, let me just make an argument around the foreign policy. You know, my argument around foreign policy is that we should stop giving softer or harder image of Pakistan. We should give the real and true image of Pakistan, because it's a beautiful country. We have languages, more languages than any other country. We have cultures, the fusion of culture that we live in. You know, and please remember, in this time and age, the most important attribute that a country can have are three, actually: the geography, the human resource, and regional connectivity. And for Pakistan, we are blessed with three. You know, geography, because Allah has blessed us with that.
Your point is well taken.
No, but I just want to highlight one point. I think for the policy maker, they should realize the strength of the youth, their wisdom, and their knack of technology. Where else would you find so many people speaking English, young English speaking population? And if you know, go to Philippines and perhaps Thailand, they would argue that if we had this number of English speaking youngsters, we can turn around in the IT and services.
We need to really tap into the potential.
And it's very, very easy.
Right. Dr. Hassan, Daud, but unfortunately we are short of time. I have to cut the show here. Senior economist, former CEO, KP Board of Investment. We really appreciate your time being with us on Views on News tonight. And Dr. Tughral Yamin, Senior Analyst, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Let me conclude today's episode with a quote by President Dr. Arif Alvi. I urge my fellow countrymen to work for the welfare and uplift of deprived sections of our society. Let's pledge to uphold the principles of democracy, freedom, equality, tolerance, forgiveness, socio-economic justice, and moral and ethical values as enunciated by Islam, unquote. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Thank you for watching.